If you asked an average teenager what they were afraid of, you might get a response like snakes, bugs, needles, or clowns. More than likely, the responses that you'd receive would be tangible things. Those fears are valid, but would you agree that something that caused lifelong damage to your body and could be obtained without you knowing be as scary, if not scarier than a snake? The purpose of this video is not to scare or discourage you from having sex. It's meant to educate you and keep your body safe. Luc Montagnier was a French virologist that discovered the human immunodeficiency virus, otherwise known as HIV. He isolated HIV in 1983 using long-term cultures of T lymphocytes. T lymphocytes will be important later on in the video. We'll come back to them. This is what the mature retrovirus looks like. You can see the quote-unquote spikes around them. These spikes are collectively and scientifically known as the ENV glycoprotein complex. They allow the retrovirus to infect other cells. Here is a mature retrovirus up close. You can see the spikes that I mentioned earlier. According to the CDC, people most commonly transmit HIV through sexual intercourse. HIV can also be transmitted by needle or syringe use. HIV is less commonly spread from mother to child during pregnancy, birth, or breastfeeding. In extremely rare cases, HIV can be spread by oral sex. HIV is not transmitted by sharing food, drinks, or toilets. These are common misconceptions. HIV can also not be transmitted by kissing, tears, insects, or pets. So, what exactly are the effects of HIV? Well, if we look inwardly into the body of an infected person, HIV destroys CD4 plus cells. CD4 plus cells are an important part of your immune system. They are a type of T helper cell, or T lymphocyte. They are responsible for fighting off common diseases and infections. Externally, HIV symptoms manifest themselves in two separate stages. In the early stages of infection, symptoms may be mild. After a few months, a flu-like sickness develops that may last a few weeks. This is associated with the first stage of HIV, known as the acute infection stage. Some acute symptoms include fever, chills, night sweats, diarrhea, rash, and swollen lymph nodes, among other symptoms. The next stage is called the clinical latent infection stage. This stage lasts anywhere from 8 to 10 years. Symptoms may or may not present themselves during this stage. The patient's CD4 count decreases as the virus replicates and advances in the body. This leads to symptoms like fatigue, shortness of breath, cough, fever, weight loss, diarrhea, and swollen lymph nodes. The final stage of HIV infection is what is referred to as AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. This is the stage where the immune system is so weakened that the infected person's risk of contracting an opportunistic pathogen is highly increased. AIDS doesn't develop in everyone that is infected with HIV, so the earlier that you receive treatment, the better the outcome. Once HIV has entered the body, HIV attaches itself to various types of white blood cells. The most important ones that the virus binds to are the CD4 positive T cells. Their specific role in the immune system is to activate and coordinate other cells. They are also known as T helper cells. The surface of these cells have a receptor called CD4, which enables HIV to attach to them. How exactly does HIV infect these cells? Well, first, it's important to understand what kind of virus HIV is. I mentioned earlier that HIV is a retrovirus. A retrovirus is an RNA virus that inserts a DNA copy of its genome into the host cell to replicate. Once the HIV gets in the CD4 positive cell, it creates a copy of its RNA using an enzyme called reverse transcriptase. So instead of the genome copy being RNA, it's a DNA copy of the genome. After the conversion of viral RNA to DNA, the new viral DNA enters the cell's nucleus. With the help of an enzyme called integrase, which is also produced by HIV, the new viral DNA becomes integrated within the cell's old DNA. The DNA of the infected cell now produces the viral RNA and the proteins necessary to assemble a new HIV. So, a new virus is assembled from the RNA and also the short pieces of the new protein. The virus buds through the membrane of the cell, wraps itself in a fragment of the cell membrane, and then pinches off from the infected cell. To be able to infect other cells, the budded virus must mature. It becomes mature when another HIV enzyme, called HIV protease, cuts structural proteins into the virus, causing them to rearrange. The reason why HIV is so hard to keep under control is because of the reverse transcriptase. The reverse transcriptase enzyme makes errors in the conversion of RNA to DNA. This results in HIV mutating easily. These mutations increase the chance of producing HIV that resists attacks. These attacks come from the person's immune system and by antiretroviral drugs. That was a lot of information to take in. I'm going to highlight some key points using analogies. HIV replication can be thought of like the picture represented with the number 1. The HIV is represented by the fire, the CD4 positive cells as the blue balls, and the smoke represents the viral load. As HIV uses more CD4 positive cells, the viral load increases. Picture 2 focuses on the enzyme reverse transcriptase and its use in converting viral RNA to DNA. The purple hand represents the enzyme, the key represents the genome, and the car represents the CD4 positive cell. When the hand grabs the key changes shape, allowing the key to quote-unquote hijack the car. Similarly, reverse transcriptase changes viral RNA to DNA, allowing the new DNA to insert itself into the CD4 positive cell's DNA, effectively hijacking the cell. Picture 3 represents the mutations caused by reverse transcriptase. Imagine that the green stick figure is a combination of the infected person's immune system and antiretroviral drugs. The door with the keypad lock is a reverse transcriptase enzyme. The jug of water on the other side of the door represents an effective treatment for HIV. The thirsty green stick figure is trying to get through the door to get the jug of water. The only problem is that the keypad code changes with each failed attempt. Each failed attempt also moves the jug of water farther away from the door. Similarly, with each successful replication of HIV, the reverse transcriptase slightly changes the DNA sequence that is embedded into each individual virus, putting an effective treatment farther from reach. So, to recap, we'll quickly go through the video backwards. HIV replication occurs in CD4 positive cells. With the help of enzymes and proteins, a juvenile HIV will bud off from the discarded CD4 positive cells. Soon, it will mature and start the cycle over again. There are 3 infection stages to HIV. The first is the acute infection stage. The second is a clinical latent infection stage. This one can last anywhere from 8 to 10 years. And the third is AIDS. Remember, not everyone who is infected with HIV develops AIDS. Dogs, insects, sharing food, drink, or toilets will not spread HIV. HIV is most commonly spread through sexual intercourse and through syringe or needle use.